Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. President of the IPU, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly of Bahrain, Honorable Members of Assemblies, Director General of the IPU, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to start my speech by expressing my gratitude for the generosity of the Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly of Bahrain for his warm hospitality. I would also like to thank all those involved in making this event possible, from the high-ranking national and international officials behind the planning to the workers on the ground. Shukran jazila to you and them all. As an Islamic concept inspired by numerous verses of the Holy Quran, peaceful coexistence and tolerance is of great importance to us. The Islamic civilization is the result of tolerance and peaceful coexistence. It's widely accepted that it's better to build bridges than walls. While racial discrimination and xenophobia make it easy to create walls between nations, we can build bridges through dialogue. The Islamic Republic of Iran has, since its inception, incorporated the peaceful teachings of Islam in its policy, using creative initiatives to strengthen multilateralism and develop peace and cooperation in international forums. We believe that the remedy for racism, xenophobia, violence, and hatred can be found in dialogue, tolerance, and democracy. Now, in order to understand the position of my country on tolerance and peaceful coexistence, one only needs to know two of the most famous quotes in Iran. One is by Imam Ali alayhi salam. Some 1400 years ago, he famously said, people are of two groups. They are either your brothers in faith or your equals in humanity. The other famous saying is a line of poetry by one of Iran's most popular poets of all times, Hafiz, who famously had the Holy Quran memorized. He wrote, peace in this life, and the next can be summed up in a mere two concepts: compassion for friends and tolerance for the others. But unfortunately, this Iranian tolerance has seldom been returned in kind. During the First and Second World Wars, for instance, my country has chosen the most peaceful position possible. It had declared neutrality. The result, however, was not so peaceful for Iranians because their country ended up being occupied by British and Soviet forces. I'm sure you agree that the problem with the lack of tolerance and peaceful coexistence in our world does not stem from a shortage of assemblies on the topic. Sharing an appreciation for peaceful coexistence and tolerance is only one step in this long and hard battle. A much bigger step is sacrifice. Like many sacrifices Iranians have made to overthrow a Western-backed monarch, defend their country with empty hands, put up with sanctions on everything from technology to medicine, and facing the martyrdom of their scientists. It's only through sacrifice that any nation can become a force to reckon with, and as a result, be granted a share of peaceful coexistence. It's due to these sacrifices that today I stand before you as a representative of the great Iranian nation, despite a most recent American hybrid attempt to export its cause regime change. It's also thanks to these great sacrifices that Iran was able to have a decisive role in the defeat of Daesh or ISIS terrorists. Today, throughout the world, countless people owe their security to the sacrifices of the lives of Iranian commanders, General Qasem Soleimani, who was martyred by the supporters of these terrorists, which brings me to my final point. The Islamic Republic, from its very inception, has stood with oppressed nations such as the Palestinians affected by the illegal Israeli occupation. It's also due to this understanding that when the war-ridden nation of Syria was recently hit with a major earthquake, it was the Islamic Republic of Iran and Muslim and Arab countries that rushed to the rescue when many others did not dare to extend a helping hand for the fear of American sanctions on the country. So, I would like to wrap up my talk with an emphasis on our position and our pledge. The Islamic Republic of Iran firmly stands with every nation's right to peaceful coexistence. We believe that this right must be and would have been readily granted to all nations had we lived in a perfect world. We stand by the pledge we made decades ago since the inception of the Islamic Republic, and that is to be friends of the oppressed.
30 seconds, please.
And a voice for the voiceless. Therefore, we welcome mutual cooperation to help strengthen other nations so that they all can demand an equal share of power, which can help prevent the monopoly of power by homogenic entities and facilitates peaceful coexistence. متشکرم. Thank you all.
Next speaker from Pakistan. You may take the floor, please.
Honorable President of Assembly, honorable fellow parliamentarians, Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you all. Even Islamic greeting is all about wishing peace upon others. I just want to cement this notion before I begin, as Islam or Islamic world is very conveniently associated with intolerance or extremism through careful propaganda. In doing so, we are in fact shying away from real reason behind intolerance and extremism, which is global inequality and lack of education. I congratulate IPU, leadership of Kingdom of Bahrain and all other stakeholders for successfully arranging 146th IPU Assembly. Bahrain feels very homely, and I thank our gracious host for the hospitality extended to our delegation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware that humanity has at all times remained in conflict. This conflict has changed many shapes and forms over the course of human history. However, one thing has always remained common. Violence in conflict has always resulted in destruction and nothing more. History shows that conflicts almost always stem from political, social, cultural, or religious differences. Let us understand, once and for all, conflicts cannot and must not be solved by violence or use of military force. We must stand firmly and strongly against any form of aggression and violence. However, we must also be consistent in denouncing violence. Building upon reality of global inequality and discrimination, I put forth a couple of questions for you to answer yourselves. Does the world equally stand up for plight of Indian occupied Kashmir, Palestine, and all other illegitimate occupation of the past and present? Sadly, all the world likes to stand up for its political and economic inclinations and nothing more. Building humanity is quite far down on our list of global priorities, where our decisions rarely account for the implications on others as long as they bring benefit to us. With such a mindset, we will never be able to address our collective challenges towards peaceful coexistence. Peace can in fact only be guaranteed through sincere dialogue and healthy democratic practices that rest upon ideals of equality, tolerance, and justice for all, without any geographical, racial, or religious discrimination. Poverty, hunger, climate change, intolerance, extremism, and terrorism continue to afflict the world today. As I said, these challenges are primarily linked to geopolitical and geoeconomic goals, worsening the situation. Root cause of many global conflicts is economic inequality, which results in poverty and hunger. Therefore, political leaders must recognize the danger posed by uneven resource distribution. Promoting interfaith harmony is crucial to addressing many of the world's problems. Members of parliament and society as a a whole should take an active role in shaping opinions, building bridges through dialogue and promoting pluralism and understanding. Excellencies, healthcare, education, and basic rights are some of the most pressing issues that demand our immediate attention. Inequalities and denial of rights are the root cause of intolerance, leading to poor societal structure and lack of peace and prosperity. These issues are not limited to a single nation or region, but affect us all. As parliamentarians, it is our duty to address these challenges and work towards sustainable solutions. Firstly, state of healthcare in many parts of the world is alarming. Millions of people are denied access to basic healthcare facilities, resulting in unnecessary deaths and suffering. We need to prioritize healthcare as a fundamental right and work towards creating a world where everyone has access to affordable and quality health services. Secondly, education is a key driver of development and progress. It is the foundation on which we can build a better future for our children and generation to come. Yet millions of children around the world are denied access to education and are therefore robbed of their potential. We must prioritize education and work towards creating a world where every child has access to quality education. This requires a multi-pronged approach, including increased investment in education, teacher training, and innovative teaching methods. We must also address root causes of educational inequality, such as poverty and gender discrimination. Together, we must work towards creating a world where every child has the opportunity to realize his full potential. Ladies and gentlemen, moving forward, notions of equality and basic rights for all human beings must be prioritized, even in every matter and decision. Without these two elements, peace can never be achieved anywhere in the world. It is time that our growing social, technological, and political progress should reflect as a widespread model of pluralism and not that of currently prevailing exclusionism. We can only overcome our challenges with sincere dialogue and action, and not with malafide intention. If peaceful coexistence is to be achieved, if we can work towards equality without discrimination, only then we will move towards inclusive societies. These are unavoidable prerequisites. I hope and pray that we can all look beyond political and economic gains at expense of peace and prosperity of fellow human beings. In the end, we must make sure that all our actions do not lead us towards a dystopian future, and time to correct our course is now. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next speaker will be from Philippines. I take the floor, please, followed by Speaker of Japan.
Mr. President, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the Philippine delegation, I would like to extend my warmest greetings on the successful convening of the 146th IPU Assembly. My first IPU was the 112th in 2005. In this increasingly interconnected world, even the pace and shape of our progress is influenced by different stakeholders. For this, we recognize such interdependence requires us to craft legislation that ensures no one is left behind, especially those belonging to the vulnerable sectors. In the Philippines, our parliamentary body endeavors to promote inclusivity through these measures on sustainable development and futures thinking. In 2019, I advocated for the creation of the first ever Committee on the Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation, and Futures Thinking in the Philippine Senate. As a party to the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, the Philippines is committed to integrate the 17 SDGs into our national development plans and policies. The purpose of this committee is to track the progress of the Philippines in terms of achieving the various SDGs. It also looks at legislation with the intent of preparing for various futures and promoting a shift to futures thinking as a major policy reform. One of the major outputs of the committee was the committee report on the future of education in the Philippines, where it examines the current situation, problems, and aspirations, and gather the recommendations of experts and other stakeholders in order to secure the best possible future for education in the country. We also allocated funding for futures offices in the Department of Education, the Department of Health, and the Department of Science and Technology in our national budget. And then We provided funding for research on the futures of food systems and food security in public universities. Similarly, we funded for the futures of food production. On education and alternative learning, recognizing the importance of education to bring the country towards its most desirable future, the Philippine Parliament created the Second Congressional Commission on Education in 2022. And this representation co-chairs the Subcommittee on Early Childhood Education and Development and Basic Education. The Commission undertakes to make transformative, concrete, and targeted reforms in the education sector, which includes addressing social inequalities and ensuring inclusivity in education. We also have our Alternative Learning Systems Act to lessen out-of-school youths and provide them with basic education. This is in line with our Inclusive Education Act that ensures all schools shall have equitable access to early learners, to every learner with a disability, such that no learner shall be denied admission based on disability. On health, the Universal Health Care Act guarantees all Filipinos equitable access to quality and affordable health care, goods and services. Over the years, we have made access to health care much more affordable, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Our sin tax reform laws of 2012 and 2020 ensure funds for universal health care by taxing harmful products, including alcohol beverages, tobacco products, and vapes. Our Cheaper Medicine Act provides for a market-based capping approach to the prices of drugs and medicines, allowing the Secretary of Health to set what we now call the Maximum Drug Retail Price Act. On women, we have our Magna Carta of Women that requires the allocation of 5% of the total budget of every agency for gender and development programs. We also have the 105-day expanded maternity leave law, extending what was previously 60 days maternity leave for all public and private sectors. We also have the Solo Parents Welfare Act. On children, a loving and caring family for every abandoned, neglected, and orphaned child could soon become a reality. This is a statement I made last year when we passed the Domestic Administration, Adoption, and Alternative Child Care Act, which simplifies the country's domestic adoption system by making it administrative in nature and streamlining the process. We have many other laws protecting children, even during times of disaster. We have laws on ageism, promoting inclusive workplace to address these specific sectors. Dear colleagues, before I end, I would like to add that I've personally benefited from these assemblies. Like I said, I joined my first IPU in 2005. It was the 112th IPU held in Manila. Being among and learning from fellow parliamentarians, mostly women, gave me the opportunity to expand my knowledge and the confidence to discuss these topics and to debate them in my own Parliament. I'm a firm believer that women must hold positions in decision-making bodies to truly give voice to women and to achieve genuine gender partnership. Congratulations to everyone. May we continue to work together to reduce inequalities in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be from Japan. You may take the floor, please, followed by Speaker of Sweden.
I am Shintaro Ito, leader of the Japanese delegations. It was on the 11th of March, 12 years ago, that the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami wrought a massive human toll on Japan. We are grateful for the support we have received from around the world. I would like to remember the victims of the recent earthquake in Turkey and Syria, and to express my deepest condolences to all those affected. Japan intends, through the combined effort of its public and private sectors, to fully cooperate in assisting the disaster victims and in the recovery and reconstruction of the affected areas. The peace and inclusiveness of the society are being threatened as intolerance and discrimination spread. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has intensified the conflicts and deepened divisions in the international community and jeopardized our peaceful coexistence. In addition, we see examples of serious human rights violations around the world. Many people are standing up to demand peace, freedom, and human rights. In order to create peaceful and inclusive society, it is critical that we share such universal values as freedom, democracy, and rule of law. Japan strongly condemns any violations of human rights. We will promote improvement in human rights conditions by working with international organizations and engaging in bilateral dialogue to understand the views of those parties concerned and offer ongoing cooperations. We will also provide countries around the world with assistance in human resource development, ensuring freedom of speech, and building and further developing systems for running elections and providing justice. We will endeavor to take a leading role in creating an inclusive society in which people with diverse cultures and pluralistic values can coexist peacefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next is Mr. Speaker from Ms. Speaker from Sweden, followed by Speaker of Australia.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, and dear members of Parliament. First, I would like to say thank you to the beautiful hosting country, Bahrain, for the warm welcoming and for organizing the 146th IPU Assembly. It is a great honor for me to speak before the Interparliamentary Assembly, where parliamentarians from all over the world are gathered. Parliament forms the very heart of democracy, where the people's representatives together form the highest decision-making power, which also has the role of examining the work of the government. Sweden recently celebrated the great breakthrough of democracy 100 years ago, when universal and equal suffrage was introduced and the first 5 female members took their seats in our parliament. I venture to say that Swedish democracy has developed since then. Today's Swedish parliament has a relatively high proportion of women members, 46% after the 22 elections. However, among young women MPs as a group, the general feeling is that there are still some greater challenges. They feel that they are questioned to a greater extent and they are expected to be better informed than other groups. Other factors that affect women MPs to an increasing extent are threats and violations, primarily via social media. The way the MPs' working week is organized also affects the possibility to combine their assignment in Parliament with parenthood. As a mother of 3 children, I'm for sure know this is a big challenge. By highlighting gender equality issues and working systematically the conditions for achieving a gender-equal parliament, it can constantly be improved. The working group on gender equality in the Swedish parliament started in 2006 and is now well established. And I'm the vice chairman in this group. The group consists of an equal number of men and women, where all 8 parties of the parliament are represented. Our focus at present includes preventing MPs from being victims of harassments and the threats, and finding new ways forward to facilitate practical reality for MPs who are the parents of young children. Because in a democracy where the parliament represents the people, it is vital that our elected representatives come from different parts of the society. This is important from several perspectives, both so that we as parliamentarians can speak on behalf of different groups when political decisions are made, but also to serve as examples. Because if we, as parliamentarians, cannot show each other respect, even though our political convictions, religious affiliations, backgrounds, gender, age, sexual orientation, and family situations differ, how can we expect the citizens in our different countries to do this? Your Excellencies, dear fellow parliamentarians, Europe is faced with a serious security policy situation, and across the world, human rights are being violated. Nevertheless, we as parliamentarians, whose task is to stand up for democracy and fundamental human rights, must never give up hope. We must continue to fight for a world where we respect one another as sovereign nations with the right to decide our own futures, as well as each nation's right to live in peace and security. In this regard, it is hard to not think of the struggle our Ukrainian friends are facing right now, when they are fighting back Russian aggression that has caused so much suffering, especially among families and children. Nor may we give up hope for a world where each person's rights to religious views and personal faith are respected, and where no one needs to endure persecution, threats, or violence account on their faith. At the same time as hate and persecution in the name of religion cannot be accepted either. Nor may we give up fight for democracy and the right for different political views and the freedom of speech. There are many examples all over the world in this respect. One is the Danish Bahraini citizen Abdulhadi Al-Kawaya, who was sentenced only in November last year for a life sentence for leading peaceful protests during the 2011 popular uprising here in Bahrain. But I know after several meetings that Bahrain strives for tolerance and respect for human rights, so I choose to hope this case will be solved. As a deputy speaker, I think it's crucial in a democracy to respect the fundamental right of freedom of speech and the right for the opposition to criticize the government. At the same time, of course, we all share our own responsibility to show each other respect despite different views, instead of spreading hate and intolerance in different ways. We must also continue to work and fight for a world where women and men have equal opportunities for a career and for political influence. Violence, violations, and discriminations merely on the ground of being a woman belongs to the scraphead of history. As a former healthcare worker, I also feel that all too seldom when speaking about democracy and human rights do we discuss the important rights of people with disabilities, to be given the right preconditions to participate in the society and be guaranteed basic financial security. All too often, these people end up in social exclusion. And in difficult times, these groups are especially vulnerable. Dear friends, and parliamentarians, and your excellencies, in our capacity as parliamentarians, we have a real chance to contribute to change and actually make the world a better place. Let us do not miss that great opportunity. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. The next speaker is from Australia. Please, might take the floor, please. Followed by Speaker of Malaysia.
Honorable President, honorable speakers, dear colleagues, at the outset, let me thank our host for their hospitality. We meet here in challenging times, challenging with a view to the global economic situation, climate change, as well as with a view to the international peace and security situation. In this regard, let me state, like my Swedish colleague did it before, how deeply I regret that we still have war in Europe. Let me be very clear. We, as members of Parliament and participants of the Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union, an organization which has always been standing for dialogue and peace, we have to take on our responsibility in tribute to the founders of this organization, which received the Peace Nobel Prize, William Randall Cramer and Frederick Bassi. Indeed, peaceful coexistence, tolerance, and inclusive societies, these are the cornerstones of a peace we want, not only for us in our countries, but for each and every country on this planet. Austria, a small country in the middle of Europe, was last year in the Global Peace Index on place number 5. Only 4 countries on these planets were statistically seen as more peaceful. And also the report reveals that the world is at the lowest point of peacefulness in the last decades. We in Austria became more peaceful. And even this shows the statistic, we have to see that also we are facing new problems. In recent years, with a huge migration and with the COVID-19 pandemics, we have witnessed also in Austria more polarization, more intolerance in our society, and also boosted by phenomena, especially on the social media, of hate speech, as it was mentioned before, and of disinformation. But we must also reflect to overcome this division. We have to work especially in the field of online media. We have to fight this fake news. We have to restore trust, and also trust in the traditional media. Especially in Europe, they are losing, widespread newspapers are losing readers, and the people, they don't trust not at all the information they get. And we have to work directly, especially with young people. In Austria, we have a so-called democracy workshop. Here we involve young people in our parliament. We encourage them to take part in the political work. And we started in 2007, and until now, we had more than 123,000 young people working with parliamentarians, and we want, on the one hand, to engage them in political work, but on the other hand, to show them that our society is a society which needs civil courage and engagement of young people. And we do the same on the European level within the Council of Europe. We support here this initiative, No Hate Speech movement, and we try also to encourage our colleagues, our fellow parliamentarians, that we try to implement in Austria international standards in our national framework, in our legal framework. So, to come to my end, what I want to say is we have to work directly with our citizens and especially with young people if we want to be successful. And IPU is such a platform where we can learn from each other. Therefore, I hope that all of us take a lot at home when we are leaving this IPU conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next speaker will be from Malaysia, followed by Russian Federation.
Your Excellencies and my fellow parliamentarians, Malaysia is unique as we are a truly multiracial and multi-religious nation. Based on racial demographics, Malaysian citizens consist of the Bumiputra, of which the Malays are majority at 67.4% of the population, Chinese at 24.6%, Indians at 7.3%, and others at 0.7%. The key point I want to make here is that the minorities in Malaysia are substantial, not token, not nominal, and yet we as a nation has found a good formula for living peacefully together. As for religions, the demographics are Muslims at 61.3%, Buddhists at 19.8%, Christians 9.2%, Hindus 6.3%. What is more interesting is the fact that you have racial groups in different religions too. For instance, it is not uncommon to have a Malaysian Chinese who is a Christian instead of being a Buddhist. Interracial marriages are accepted and are much more common than a decade ago. I believe there is no equivalent country in the world with these kind of demographics. As such, I humbly stand before you to offer, to share some views and policies on the main theme of this IPU Assembly, promoting peaceful coexistence and fighting intolerance. Malaysia ranks 18th out of the 163 countries in the Global Peace Index. We are ahead of many of our neighbors, and in the Asia Pacific, we're ranked number 4 after New Zealand, Singapore, and Japan. How did we achieve this? At a social and communal level, citizens of Malaysia instinctively practice mutual respect and a very heavy dose of tolerance and understanding. And it may sound trivial, but also a very deep love in sharing and reinventing the good and diverse food that we enjoy from each other. This cements our multiracial society. We also rally around our national team when it comes to badminton and squash. But besides being a foodie nation, a very serious one, where does all this communal goodwill stem from? I believe that the goodwill of Malaysians primarily stems from the common Asian values found in Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism, all of which promote universal values of peace, tolerance, and respect. The good news is this: the quest for a Malaysian identity is an ongoing project, and thankfully is one of the main preoccupations of the younger set of Malaysians, the youth. On the governmental side, the efforts to build a more united Malaysia has had mixed results. In the aftermath of the terrible race riots in 1969, successive Malaysian governments have utilized the tool of positive discrimination to try to shape a more equal society between the races. The rationale of social justice is absolutely correct, but the implementation of these policies has to some degree been subverted by corruption and the abuses of power by political elites. Having said that, the things that successive governments in Malaysia have done right are as follows. Number 1, pushing a national identity through the Rukun Negara or national principles. Number 2, promoting good values of national unity via education system and state media. Number 3, safeguarding religious freedom. Number 4, recognizing and implementing fair race and religious holidays for all. On the economic front, the discovery of oil and the adoption of liberal economic policies in the 1980s, Malaysia has created a big middle class. And we all know the middle class tend to have more tolerant and progressive policies shunning most forms of extremism. However, Malaysia is not perfect, and we are not immune to extremism. Of late, we have seen more emphasis on religion and race politics during recent elections. This is a worrying trend and the deployment of fake news via social media can be a potent challenge to democratic norms in our country. To counter these challenges, we will need to educate our people to be wary of fake news, and at the same time demand giant social media companies to be much more responsible in filtering extremism and removing fake news. While we should try to regulate social media, the real policy is still to focus on the younger generation and to continue to deliver quality education that can transform them into more discerning and critical citizens. Civic mindfulness and social media moderation training are must-haves. In closing, I thank you all for your kind attention, and to our most gracious host, Bahrain, for your incredible hospitality. I hope my little sharing of the Malaysian experience in promoting peaceful coexistence and fighting intolerance can be of some use to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next is Russian Federation. You can take the floor, please, followed by Ghana.
Dear Mr. Chairperson, dear colleagues, I would like to start with expressing our gratitude to the National Assembly of Bahrain, first for the hospitality, and secondly for an excellent choice of the main topic of our discussion today. Because I believe everybody will agree that the questions raised in this topic are of key importance, whatever we discuss here: inter-ethnic conflicts, interreligious conflicts, state-to-state conflicts. It's always there. And I believe everyone will agree that solving the problems of intolerance, problems of coexistence, will always start, so to say, below, or from below. It starts in one's home or family. It starts in one's university, at one's office, in one's municipality, or in one's country. And here, I am proud to represent a country which has a successful experience gained during centuries of how to promote peaceful coexistence with inclusive societies and how to fight intolerance in my country, in Russia. Of course, it did not go smoothly the whole time, the way it does not go smoothly for any country or any nation, and we did have our internal conflicts. The last one in Chechnya, and I use the word the last one, not the latest one, because I believe we have drawn our lessons out of these and previous conflicts. As for now, in Russia, we have up to 200 different nationalities living in peace and harmony. We have 4 traditional religions existing in peace and harmony. And what is important, we have up to 300 languages, and in most cases, any of them has its own rights for development. In my constituency, it is the Republic of Mariel, we have 3 state languages. 3 state languages. We have a region in Caucasus called Dagestan, where they have 14 state languages equal to each other. And by the way, in Crimea, we have 3 state languages, Ukrainian included, and Tatar language included. Yes, in all these cases, the Russian language is present because Russians are in a majority position in my country. And yes, we have Russian nationalists, like in any other ethnic group or in any country or in any nation. Nationalists with the slogan, Russia is for Russians. What makes difference? In my country, we do not let nationalists come into power. Either they are Russians or of any other ethnic region. And this is why There is not a single ethnic group, there is not a single religious group in my country which wants to flee, which wants to escape, which wants to leave the Russian Federation. They all live in harmony. They all feel themselves comfortable. And this is our unique experience. Unfortunately, the problem of letting nationalists come into power was not solved by many of our neighbors. Unfortunately, Ukraine included, where they have, as for now, just one language, just one state language. When the Soviet Union collapsed in Ukraine, there were more than 20,000 schools. They are still there, 22,000. 50% of them had education in Russian, 11,000 schools. 30 years later, there is not a single one school in Ukraine teaching in Russian. There is not a single one kindergarten teaching in Russian. And you may protest, but this is simply true. And there is no freedom of religion any longer, because the Ukrainian authorities absolutely illegally take away from the traditional Russian Orthodox Church their churches and monasteries. And this is also clear facts. At the end, Minsk agreements. In 8 years, Russia was trying to assist Ukraine to solve the problems of its internal development and to keep the territorial integrity of Ukraine. The Minsk agreements were about promoting peaceful coexistence. They were about fighting intolerance. They were about building up inclusive society in Ukraine. And now I will cite the former president of Ukraine, Mr. Poroshenko. We were speaking about that this morning. At that moment, the president of Ukraine signing the Minsk agreements. Mr. Poroshenko, now, we have achieved what we wanted, to knock out 8 years for ourselves and build the power of the armed forces of Ukraine. This was the first task, and it was achieved. The Minsk agreements have fulfilled their task. Later on, the Federal Chancellor of Germany, Madame Merkel, said in an interview to Die Zeit, the Minsk agreement was an attempt to give Ukraine time. It also used this time to become stronger, as you can see now. And later on, Mr. Hollande, the President of France, yes, Angela Merkel is right on this point. Since 2014, Ukraine has strengthened its military posture.
Thank you very much.
Indeed,
is over.
The Ukrainian army was completely different from that of 2014. Now it is better trained and equipped. It is the merit of the Minsk agreements, and it has given the Ukrainian army this opportunity to become stronger.
Thank you.
This is how all of us missed a chance to assist Ukraine to have peaceful coexistence, to have an inclusive society, and to fight intolerance in its country. And this is how Ukraine continuously is being exploded
from
Mr.
inside. Speaker. The next
Thank you very much.
From Ghana. Followed by Speaker of Thailand.
His Royal Majesty, the King of the Kingdom of Bahrain, Your Excellencies, my colleagues, speakers of various parliaments, presiding officers, and members of parliament, I greet you and I wish you a very successful assembly. It is really a pleasure to be in this beautiful city of Manama, Bahrain, to attend the 146th Assembly and related meetings of the IPU. On behalf of the delegation from Ghana, and on my part, I extend a warm fraternal greetings and gratitude to His Majesty the King of Bahrain, the government, people, and Parliament of Bahrain for accepting to host this conference and putting at our disposal such a splendid and well-equipped conference facility. I sincerely congratulate you all for this show of solidarity and commitment to the principles and values of the Interparliamentary Union. Mr. President, today's world is plagued with many complexities, uncertainties, insecurity, disasters, economic depression, and conflicts. The theme of this assembly, promoting peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies, fighting intolerance, could not have been more appropriate, given the extent of violence, statelessness, conflicts, poverty, exodus, now mildly referred to as migration, cataclysmic tumults, and many, many deaths in many places in the world. I want to take this opportunity to salute the Interparliamentary Union and the organizers for the appropriateness of this theme for this 146th Assembly. Mr. President, the world is in no doubt a diverse and polarized creature. Different races, gender, religions, continents, traditions, cultures, potentials, languages, histories live and depend on it. We have no choice than to accept the diversity, since diversity is the spice of life. But for polarization, if we put our hands to the wheel, we could close the poles, unite, and coexist in peace and harmony. I believe we are all at aim in this vision, hence our collective commitment to the slogan for democracy for everyone. Yet a few intolerant ones are jeopardizing this global effort of promoting peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies. Distinguished participants, parliaments all over the world are better positioned and empowered to cover and counter these destructive efforts of the few. Mr. President, the Parliament of Ghana has worked and is still working to promote peaceful coexistence of different tribes, religions, creed, race, color, gender, political opinions, migrants, and so on, thanks to the provisions of the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. Additionally, Parliament has enacted the National Peace Council Act, Vigilantism and Related Offences Act, Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Act, and established through various legislations a well-structured and independent judiciary and justice system. Ghana is committed to developing a democratic culture free of tolerance, a democratic culture that promotes respect for all people, human rights and freedoms, human dignity, equality, women empowerment and gender parity, inclusiveness of all in the decision-making process. As a result, the 2022 Global Peace Index ranked Ghana second in Africa for having a high level of internal peace. Mr. President, we can't achieve this in the world together. The need for the global population to pursue the harmony that is embedded in the culture of the world is now. The Sustainable Development Goals come in handy to lead the way, especially in the area of global partnership and inclusive societies. No country can successfully develop alone. We will need to complement the efforts of one another. We are stronger when we act together than when we act individually. And even when our purposes and goals coincide, a healthy competition makes our lives healthier, better, and longer. We must therefore not only learn to coexist in peace, we must also work to promote inclusive growth and development by consciously working to prop up the development of the least developed countries. Underdevelopment and poverty are some of the main drivers of intolerance, such as xenophobia, terrorism, conflicts, and wars in the world. As legislators, it behoves on us to encourage tolerance and inclusive development through the laws we make, and particularly through the tools of oversight of the executive to ensure that our respective countries are set on the path of peace, security, and sustainability. We have to commit ourselves to holding governments of our countries to contain corruption, eliminate waste, ignorance, and greed. This is the smooth way to building fair, just, and prosperous societies. Mr. President, the Interparliamentary Union can rely on the Parliament of Ghana to achieve the theme of this assembly. The Parliament of Ghana will work in partnership with the IPU and all members to fight intolerance and promote peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies. The Parliament of Ghana is translating the values and principles of good governance into concrete benefits
Mr.
for all the
Speaker, 30
people.
seconds, please.
This explains why a large gender parity delegation of 4 ladies, 4 men, 3 of whom are from government and 3 from the opposition, led by me, the Speaker from Ghana, is here to work with the Interparliamentary Union and its members to craft our resolutions that will further the cause of the team and humanity as a whole. Ghana believes it is only when we succeed in the implementation of this vision that the world will know true peace and prosperity. I want to take this opportunity again to thank all of you, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next speaker is from Thailand. May take the floor, please, followed by Speaker of Libya.
Honorable President, distinguished delegates, and dear colleagues, Thailand continues to deal with increasingly complex challenges that transcend national borders, including building a peaceful and harmonious multicultural society. We are facing a meaningful challenge whether our democracies are robust enough to accommodate the issues of diversity and tolerance in the 21st century. Thai people have always embraced diversity and tolerance. Cultural pluralism and intercultural dialogue have naturally been the grain of the Thai society. As a predominant Buddhist and secular country, the long-standing traditions of acceptance, moderation, and compromises of the Thai culture has also played an essential role in fostering an environment where people of various religions and ethnicities have peacefully lived together in harmony and mutual respect for centuries. Since 1932, the Thai constitutional monarchy has continued to be the center of reverence and serve as unifying forces for the nations that bring together people of different faiths and cultures, and constitutionally upheld as the patron of all faiths. For decades, the holistic wisdom of the sufficient economy philosophy has guided the kingdom's progress towards sustainability, inclusive societies, and social equity. Thailand has zero tolerance policy against racism and practice of gender-based discrimination, the protection against many forms of discrimination based on racial, ethnic, and religious reasons provided by international instruments had been enshrined in a number of our domestic law. The Constitution has served as foundation for the 20-year national strategy, which promotes development based on social and cultural diversity. With 62 ethnic groups in the country, The Constitution also guarantees cultural rights of Thai people with diverse cultural identities to preserve their ways of life and express their cultures freely. The National Assembly of Thailand has taken an active part in advancing inclusiveness and promoting the culture of tolerance in many respects. Since 2019, the ethnic groups and the LGBTQ+ community have been included and accepted in the Thai Parliament and have officially been incorporated into the title and mandate of a Parliamentary Standing Committee as key platform to nurture diversity and equality in parliamentary democracy. As parliamentarians, we have a responsibility to ourselves and to the international community to join forces in building bridges of understanding and solidarity among different communities and move forward together to build a better and safer world where human differences are cherished and diverse societies thrive. As a former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan once said in 2013, learn from each other and make our different traditions and cultures a source of harmony and strength, not discord and weakness. Lastly, may I express on behalf of the parliamentary delegation of Thailand our sincere appreciation to our host, the Parliament of Bahrain, and Bahraini authorities concerned, as well as professional support from the IPU Secretariat. Our sincere congratulations for the successful organization of this international conference that achieves all the objectives. We humbly wish His Majesty the King of Bahrain, His Royal Highness the Prime Minister, His Excellency the Speaker of Bahraini Council of Representatives, and the lovely people of Bahrain good health and very successful in future endeavors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next will be Speaker of Libya. I take the floor, please, followed by the Speaker of France.
معالي السيد رئيس الجلسة.
Your Excellency, President of the Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to greet you with the greeting of Islam. May the peace, blessings, and mercy of God be upon you. On my own behalf, but also on behalf of the President and members of the Libyan Parliament, allow me to express our deepest gratitude to the Kingdom of Bahrain, His Majesty the King, the Parliament of Bahrain, and the Bahraini people for their generosity and warm welcome. Talking about promoting peaceful coexistence and tolerance and rejecting hatred, violence, and intolerance has become necessary to settle relations at the national and international levels. It is a human principle that everyone aspires to. The importance of coexistence and tolerance comes from the fact that they represent the main factors for achieving security, stability, and development in any society. Because there is a close relationship between coexistence and tolerance as a culture and security as a goal. Security can only be achieved when stability is guaranteed, and stability can only be achieved when tolerance and understanding is achieved. One of the most conditions of that is the acceptance of each other by members of society, regardless of their ethnic and religious differences, so that we have a multi-tolerant and open society in which the rate of hatred, intolerance, and extremism decreases. Islam is the religion of peaceful coexistence, and these principles, the principles of promoting peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies, are values of Islam. The beliefs of Islam are deeply enrooted in the message of peace. In this regard, my country has strengthened the values of coexistence and inclusivity by adopting a set of law on fighting intolerance, terrorism, and crime. The concept of peaceful coexistence has become one of the primordial principles to manage diversity in human societies in a healthy manner. But we quickly realized that it has to be also converted into a force to strengthen and enhance security and achieve peace, in a way to stop marginalization, exclusion, hatred, intolerance, violence, conflict, terrorism, and chaos, with all of their negative and destructive sequelae on human communities. Therefore, it is important for us to focus on these tools to overcome the main challenges. We live in a digital era. The world has become a small village. This, of course, has a lot of advantages, but it also has a number of severe disadvantages. Such tools, digital tools, can be used to fan the flame of tension. They can be used to incite hatred and killing. Thus, the importance to use digital media for our own benefit, because it is a very influential tool. It is a vital way to transfer information, to share opinions, to share knowledge. It is also a tool that can be used to raise awareness and educate communities and individuals. But it is a double-edged sword, because despite the fact that it provides an opportunity to strengthen the culture of coexistence and tolerance, it comes with its cohort of challenges that might impede tolerance, coexistence, and their strengthening. It might even be used by those who stand against the values of peace and peaceful coexistence. These will use digital tools and social media platforms to spread hatred and spread their poisonous ideologies among individuals and communities. The digital media has contributed to a great extent in globalizing radicalism and extremism. Recently, we have seen a very close link between such practices and digital media. Terrorist groups and radicalized individuals have used this instrument so effectively in recruiting and promoting their ideologies. This, of course, has negatively impacted the concept of national security in certain states. In some cases, conflicts and wars have gone so far that it has become very difficult to protect the social capital of these countries. In order to maintain peaceful coexistence and tolerance in this era of digital media, we call for taking the following measures. First of all, spreading the cultures of peaceful coexistence and tolerance, especially by using digital media, tools and platforms within religious, educational, and social institutions. Second, by spreading the culture of superseding public interest on individual interests. And third, by raising awareness of communities and individuals. Thank you very much. We wish you constant and permanent peace, and we wish you success in all your endeavors. May the peace, mercy, and blessings of God be upon you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next speaker will be France. Take the floor, please, followed by the Speaker of Ecuador.
Thank you, President. Dear colleagues, peaceful coexistence is what the two French assemblies have called for, and I will leave it up to Brigitte Liesel to round off our statement. Inclusive society is a society which contributes to the benefits of all. Their empowerment. An inclusive society is not a constrained society. It's a society that draws upon the wealth of its diversity. The philosophy of enlightenment and the Human Rights Declaration, which are the hallmarks of France, mean that the country obviously feels great empathy for these principles. However, the principle of harmonious existence is fairly recent in our country. Historically, the principle of equality and non-discrimination, the foundation of the French Republic, led to giving precedence to the concept of integration and the uniform implementation of the rule of law. The principle of different treatment in different situations only gradually crept in. introduction of gender equality in terms of electoral office in 1999, and then professional and social responsibilities led to two constitutional revisions to bring them into line with the principles of equality and non-discrimination. Sometimes France has been in the forefront, as was the case in 2013 with the introduction of the obligation for political parties to present a man-woman tandem at the top of the list for departmental elections. Over and above inclusion, claims for equity, equality, and the right to be different made the French concept of equality evolve. For a quarter of a century, the French Constitutional Council has recognized that the principle of equality is not opposed to legislation or regulations to regulate differently different situations. Look, for example, at the schooling of children who have handicaps. In 2019, the public service of an inclusive school was set up to bring together all the players concerned, the state, associations, families, local government, and facilitate the taking into account of the special educational needs of handicapped people. When it comes to social action, the term inclusion began to be used as the turn of the century, taking over from the concept of the fight against poverty and inclusion. Immigration policy also has used the term inclusion for about 10 years, although the notion of integration is still widely used in this field. More recently, the idea of digital inclusion has appeared, given the growing use of digital tools and the use of internet by local government and the central government. Internet has become indispensable. If you don't have access to the internet, it's a major factor for exclusion. A digital inclusion plan was launched in 2017, and recently the Senate looked at a law to foster digital inclusion. That is a brief overview, which is very incomplete, of the way in which the objective of an inclusive society is taken into account and implemented in France. Thank you very much for your attention, and we'll revert to this topic later. Thank you.
Speaker of Ecuador, can take the floor, please. Followed by Finland, Speaker of Finland.
Un saludo desde
I send greetings from the Ecuadorian delegation and thank you to the Kingdom of Bahrain for its kind hospitality. We parliaments lay down standards which are designed to create a fairer, more equitable society. We are a counter-democratic power to counter the authoritarian desires of governments that might use pressure, violence, or other mechanisms which lead to exclusion and intolerance and are incompatible with democracy. We parliaments have the moral obligation, the ethical and legal duty to combat intolerance, whatever the circumstances or the political regime. The National Assembly of Ecuador, with a single chamber, has 137 members. 15 are elected. 117 represent the provinces, and there are legislators who represent the Ecuadorian diaspora, about 13 million people. There are various electoral areas. I represent Asia, Oceania, and others. The Ecuadorian Parliament has a large number of women MPs, 72 out of 137 MPs. That is 45% of the National Assembly. This springs from our law, which provides that gender alternates must prevail in all electoral lists. And we also have no gender preference. We women hold a lot of decision-making power, and we women are paving the way to the future. We provide for good training, networking, solidarity, and others. And indeed, this is very important. In our parliaments, we have the right spaces to carry out our work. How can we be more inclusive and not discriminate against single women and mothers? Historically, parliaments have been the preserve of men, organized for men, taking into account the fact that someone else takes care of household chores and the children. Sexual harassment against women parliamentarians must be combated. Our electoral law provides that 25% of the candidates have to be under the age of 30. As a result, we have 16 young MPs under the age of 30. That is 4.3% of the members of parliament. And according to IPU standards, we have 6 MPs under the age of 43, 41% of the total number of parliamentarians. And these women and these young women and men have put forward any number of very forward-looking proposals. The President of the Republic has been accused of corruption, and there were investigations into a presumed tax invasion linked to the Panama Papers. In Latin America and in Ecuador, we are fighting democratically against corruption. We have often been the victims of misconceptions by others. The geopolitical strategy undermines human rights because we have all sorts of legal procedures which make it absolutely impossible to create the rule of law. The idea is to destroy morally, economically, the political opposition by neutralizing it, and through these means to ensure that they do not become elected. That is a failure of democracy. We in Ecuador have received a lot of support from neighboring countries. We fight intolerance and hatred against women politicians in the networks, social networks, and hegemonistic media. This is not acceptable. We parliamentarians must continue to promote the building of fairer, equitable societies based on solidarity. We have to foster citizen participation, respect diversity, and promote equal opportunities, the eradication of discrimination and intolerance. We must foster training and information, human rights, non-discrimination, and the fight against all forms of intolerance. We need to establish standards within our parliaments which provide for sanctions in the event of discriminatory acts. We need to have a parliamentary code for proper conduct. This is something that has been put forward by we parliamentarians with a view to further action. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is from Finland. May take the floor, please, followed by Suriname.
Buenos tardes, señor presidente.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I represent Finland, which is one of the least corrupt, most stable countries, which is free, equal, egalitarian, and very happy. We have a robust government, but also we have a political opposition and a free and strong press. We tolerate criticism, discussion, different opinions, and so on. But we also have our Achilles heel. Despite all the attempts and programs by governments and various other agreements, we have not managed to ratify the international agreement on the rights of native peoples, and I'm referring to the Sami. We cannot guarantee handicapped people the same possibilities in terms of work, and we have further challenges which we still need to take up. Despite all this, we can consider that Finland and our Scandinavian neighbors are countries with inclusive, well-developed societies based on peaceful coexistence. Notwithstanding, with our other neighbor, Russia, the situation is totally different. For years now, leaders have discriminated against the opposition and made it very difficult for human rights organizations and other international organizations to perform their work. This country has waged a sudden, unacceptable war against his neighbor, Ukraine, whose right to exist as a country is being seriously threatened. It's for shame on Russia. Unfortunately, the same domestic criticism can apply to our host country, Bahrain. It's important to understand that the value of a country is rooted in observance of citizens' rights, like freedom of speech, the acceptance of a critical opposition, and a free press, the banning of the death sentence, guaranteeing fair and open trials, and equal rights for all, whatever they may think or say, whatever the gender, religion, or sexual orientation. For these reasons, I would like to ask you all, given this definition, what the situation is in your country. What can we do to improve the situation in our countries? Of course, there are problems in every country, but what is most important is to propose solutions and make the country better for minorities as well. Sometimes you must start by just admitting the fact there are problems. For these reasons, I think there should be gestures of goodwill. Our host country could start by freeing Mr. Al-Kabaya, a citizen who was sentenced to over 10 years in prison based on false accusations without any proof. This would be the beginning of a better future for all. Thank you very much.
Next speaker from Suriname. You may take the floor, please, followed by the Speaker of United Kingdom.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, goedendag, good afternoon. At the outset, Mr. President, please allow me to express on behalf of my beloved country Suriname our deepest sympathy and sincerest condolences to Turkey and Syria following the devastating impact caused by the massive earthquake in February. Let us pray as one IPU family for strength to overcome this massive natural disaster. As I turn to address the theme of the general debate, I refer to the following. Human rights and fundamental freedoms are preserved in the Constitution of Suriname. All present with the territory of Suriname have an equal claim to protection of person and property. Suriname's adherence to equality and non-discrimination is based on the very fabric of diverse multi-ethnic cultural society. The keen awareness of these profound principles among the many ethnic groups has been inspired us to peacefully coexist with each other. Respect for cultural diversity is a distinct characteristic of the Surinamese society. Moreover, Suriname has demonstrated that a multi-ethnic society doesn't have to be drama as long as you can continue to respect the power of difference. At the same time, you must be willing to get to know the other and build a society with the other. This is an ongoing process that requires addressing all forms of intolerance that may arise, including steps taken towards overcoming challenges such as identified increase of hate and hate-related racial speech on social media and other online platforms. Challenges that could instigate intolerance in our society, however, particular when it concerns inequality gaps related to language barriers, causing delays in the educational process and gender inequalities. Recently, a reform process of the educational system has initiated whereby children are being educated in their own community language. Furthermore, as a fundamental step towards inclusion, the Parliament of Suriname started to translate the activities. Dear colleagues, Mr. President, With respect to gender inequalities, the Parliament of Suriname recently enacted labor legislation and parental leave, sexual harassment in the workplace, and equal treatment in employment. With respect to persons with disabilities, Parliament approved the ratification by Suriname of United Nations Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities. The Parliament of Suriname contributes to ensuring access to buildings and services for the protection of persons with disabilities, safeguard the right to health and rehabilitation, non-discrimination in employment, the right to property, access to financial service, social protection, right to private life, access to medical data, and right to be dignified participation in cultural life. Digital inclusiveness, ICT, is an important precondition for the development. The factors that promote coexistence between different groups and how these are encouraged by the Parliament are as follows. There are different kinds of organizations and foundations who encourage inclusiveness in Suriname by carrying out various projects for the different groups. The Parliament encourages all these factors by holding meetings with various stakeholders, providing presentation, legislations, providing information through our television channels and social media. Staff members of Parliament include persons with disabilities. Moreover, there are persons with visual impairment in the operational department where all meetings are recorded, and persons with hearing impairment in another department. Recently, the Speaker of Parliament of Suriname has appointed a well-known talented young person from our community with physical disability as Ambassador of Parliament for 1 year. As ambassador, he gets the opportunity to encourage other youth with disabilities and combating bullying for people with disabilities. This will be done by sending short video message on our television channels. The National Assembly of Suriname can promote inclusiveness in the parliamentary work through different ways, including further encouraging transparency and access to public information, accountability, and citizen participation. The role collective of parliaments could play in helping address drives of intolerance or promote inclusion and peaceful coexistence are supporting the implementation of the SDGs, especially SDG 10, exchanging best practices amongst parliaments, working with NGOs and other international organizations, encouraging other countries that have not yet access to the UN Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities to do so, encourage implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities by countries who already ratified it. At least, but not last, Mr. President, I would like to thank the Kingdom of Bahrain for hosting this IPU Assembly in Bahrain. This is my first IPU Assembly meeting. Many more to come. Thank you, Suriname, for sending me. Once again, thank you, Bahrain, for the warm welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, Shukriyana, thank you. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker from United Kingdom, followed by Latvia, Speaker of Latvia.
Mr. President, honoured and distinguished members of the Assembly, 2023 gives us many chances to mark the achievements of global democracy. 70 years since the Universal Declaration and 30 years since the Vienna Convention on Human Rights, and 25 years since the Good Friday Agreement. All examples of how politics and parliamentarians can change the lives of people in a positive way using words, leadership and persuasion. Contrast this with what happens when politicians use force, aggression and bloodshed to impose their will on others. The impact on people, the people we are elected to represent, is anything other than positive. Last week, I was honoured to be part of a parliamentary assembly which met in Belfast to mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. The British-Irish Parliamentary Assembly, or BIPA as it is known, brings together parliamentarians from all the legislatures that meet on the islands that make up the British Isles. It has met in some form since 1992, well before the signing of the agreement, and it played a part in creating the environment that allowed that agreement to happen. the relationships formed between parliamentarians who were all personally affected by the Troubles, the understanding that it was in everyone's interest to find a resolution, and the acceptance that if you really want to solve a problem, there will be a way, meant that there was space for true leadership to be shown to find a political solution. And it was the IPU that played a part, because it was the BG IPU that was asked to create a forum where UK and Irish politicians could meet, and it was that forum that now meets as BIPA. At the 63rd plenary last week, we heard from some of the architects of the agreement, including the former Taoiseach, Bertie Ahern. We also heard from members of the Women's Coalition, which played a vital role in the peace process. Those women were brave. They came from all parts of society in Northern Ireland and from all communities. In the 1990s, when cross-community engagement could lead to retribution from terrorists, those women showed incredible courage. But they showed those in power that solutions could be found, and they demanded that their leaders find them. Mothers, sisters, daughters came together to say enough is enough, and they forced the leaders to listen. Being a woman in politics shouldn't be a brave thing to do. It shouldn't be unusual. It shouldn't mean risking your personal safety. But instead, we face abuse and threats. In the UK, we know that on average, women MPs serve one fewer parliamentary term than their male counterparts. There are many reasons for this. Women often represent seats with implicitly lower majorities than men. Family commitments also play their part. But we hear from survey after survey that social media and the abuse experienced is too much to take. That is why the UK's online safety bill is so important in starting to tackle this issue. And I'm sure you will be shocked to learn that many of the architects of the Good Friday Agreement are of the view that such an agreement would not be possible in today's environment of Twitter and Facebook commentary. A sobering thought indeed. Our role is to stand up for those we represent and ensure we hold executives to account. We've talked at this Assembly about the United Nations and the role that the IPU plays in scrutinising the work of the UN. I want governments that are members of the UN to live by the ideals they have signed up to. That means delivering on the SDGs, meeting their climate change obligations, and respecting the laws and borders of others. I hope that this Assembly can call out those UN members that flout the rules and demand action. One SDG I want to highlight is 8.7, which calls for the eradication of forced labour and modern slavery. Sadly, we are still very far from meeting this goal. There are estimated to be almost 50 million victims of modern slavery globally. There are victims in every country. They pick the cotton we wear and the chocolate we eat. They are forced to prostitute themselves, and they deliver the drugs that kill our children. Where there is disaster and trauma, there are opportunities for exploiters to find new victims. And they are then responsible for more causes of trauma. For example, 40% of all deforestation is carried out by victims of forced labour, creating more climate change and more potential victims. We need to confront this. We need the United Nations to confront this. We need to make it a matter for the next General Assembly. Mr. President, democracy matters. Respecting human rights matters. Leadership matters. We know of the great examples of the past. We need great examples for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next speaker is from Latvia, followed by the Speaker of Chile.
Mr. President, dear colleagues, let me remind you that 6 years ago we debated on the subject about promoting peace through interfaith and ethnic dialogue. Has the situation improved? No. The Global Peace Index says that the world is at its lowest point in the last 15 years. We see violent demonstrations, hate speech, fake news, growing social and economic differences, low trust in democracy and human rights, but it cannot justify the use of brutal force. Today, the word peace must be understood literally, because a real war now is taking place in Europe. More than 1 year, and peaceful coexistence is like a dream in people's minds. colleagues. Current IPU strategy means to focus on climate change, democracy, human rights, respect for women, sustainable development. But how does it go together with brutal wars in Europe and other parts of the world? And who is to blame for such a situation? And what we can do to improve the situation? Some insights on how Latvian society has managed to keep cultural diversity and peaceful coexistence between ethnic and religious groups. Historically, Latvia has been situated at the geographical and cultural crossroads. Many ethnic groups have been living together for hundreds of years. Our society has learned tolerance towards different cultures, lifestyles and beliefs, at the same time preserving its own unique identity. Out of almost 2 million of the population of Latvia, only 60% were Latvians. There are more than 100 ethnicities living in Latvia. The largest group are Russians, Belarusians, Ukrainians. And we have more than 300 minority associations. Schools in Latvia illustrated our inclusiveness. We have 7 general education schools in Latvia. 77% are schools that teach only Latvian. 20% teach in Russian and Latvian. But 11 schools implement programs in minority languages such as Polish, Ukrainian, Belarusian. These schools are fully funded by the state. In Latvia, we promote intercultural dialogue by strong language learning traditions. This is one of the best ways to promote people-to-people contacts and improve in understanding and tolerance to other cultures, ethnicities and religions. A great role in studies play not only schools but cultural centers too. Centers like German, Russian, Jewish, French, Danish, Chinese have long traditions in Latvia. Ladies and gentlemen, by our constitution in Latvia, the state is separate from the church. We have strong Catholic, Lutheran and Orthodox traditions in Latvia. Despite differences, these groups can develop ecumenical dialogue. At the same time, Latvians are tolerant towards other religions, including Judaism, Islam and Buddhism. Our constitution strongly confirms that intolerance is not allowed and not acceptable in Latvia. Our parliament always supports the position of equal attitude without reference to race, language or religion. Standing committees address issues related to ethnic dialogue and social integration. Dear colleagues, Latvia is a small country, but our experience from the previous century going through the time of war, occupation and deportations is significant. There has been no war in Latvia for almost 80 years, but there is a war near our borders now. Our nations have given us a mandate to shape our present and future, and I really don't believe that any sane person could vote for intolerance resulting in war, kill children and rape women. We know that nobody has rights to convince others with force about the primacy of his culture, religion, world order. But in reality, we live in the area of conflicts, clashes, wars, exactly based on ethnic and others intolerances. We need to promote respect for the universal values of human dignity, equality, right to integrity and peace, for tolerance not only in words, but in stable solutions and reactions, and real actions. Thank you, Bahrain, and be complementary in the diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker from Chile may take the floor, please, followed by the speaker of Germany.
Colleagues, I'd like to begin by expressing my thanks on behalf of the entire parliamentary delegation of Chile to the Bahraini Parliament for having been so successful in organising this 146th Assembly. We also extend our thanks for the hospitality we've received. We feel that here we have gathered the best of our democracies, and we're here to think about how to perfect them and take them forward. The topic for this Assembly reflects our concern with a number of different situations that have arisen recently, promoting peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies, fighting intolerance. This topic leads us to get our priorities in order and set agendas to think about how humanity can move forward to tackle the challenges it faces. The impressive scientific and technological development of the last few years should enable us to overcome many of the problems that we face with the resources we have today. We should be able to imagine solutions for hunger, lack of water, climate change, and so on and so forth, and yet that's not the case. We produce enough food to feed the whole of the global population, but there are many human beings, including children, who are dying of hunger or suffering from malnutrition. Medical science developed vaccines for COVID quickly, but many people still haven't received them. Human beings don't have access to drinking water in some circumstances, and seas are rising. There is still international competition for power over the global order. These realities are very different from the ideals that we might have held 3 decades ago, when at the end of the Cold War and democracy was returning to Latin America, the Oslo agreements, recognition of women's rights and gender equality, the end of apartheid, and the setting of the Millennium Development Goals. In spite of all of this, crises continue to exist. We need to think about how to move forward with peaceful coexistence and more plural societies. We've made progress in some directions without doubt, but there have also been great pockets of resistance, and they've been even bigger than we thought. A few years ago in my country, democracy came back, and we had the concept of a rainbow in which everybody was represented. Today, by contrast, the colours of the rainbow have faded. Categorical statements are made, leaving us only with black and white. Today we have a major opportunity to ensure that all parliaments around the world identify the factors that lead to intolerance. The IPU is a significant forum to combat these problems. We need to promote inclusion and foster peaceful coexistence to build resilient and cohesive societies. Climate change, democracy, humanitarian crises, gender equality, participation of young people, peace, security, sustainable development, these are all part of the strategic goals that the IPU holds. As we look to Angola in October, we should concentrate our action on a number of areas. Humanitarian crises. There are a number of these in various countries of the world, particularly developing countries, where sectarianism, violence, pandemics and other issues are seriously jeopardizing major tracts of the population. Secondly, peace in Central Europe. The conflict between Ukraine and Russia has led to the exodus of many citizens and is threatening the lives of the majority of that population, and has also fed significantly into the deterioration of the international situation. The worsening situation means that we need to take the measures to set up dialogue and prevent a new Cold War. Gender equality and the assassination and repression of women in certain parts of the world, particularly Afghanistan, is to be lamented. In many cases, basic rights to education and family life, for example, are violated. We need to think about the Sustainable Development Goals as another area, and the strengthening of democracy. All of the proposals that we're aware of should be part of our core challenge and should feature in the main goal that we share, which is to promote peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies and fighting intolerance. Finally, I urge you all to continue developing the founding principles that led to the founding of the IPU. I beg your pardon. Thank you.
Thank you. The speaker is from Germany. May take the chair, please. Followed by San Marino, Speaker of San Marino.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, and this is very important to us, on behalf of the German delegation, I would like to express my sincere thanks to our Bahraini hosts for your hospitality and for organizing this very important assembly. Our thanks also go to the IPU Secretariat and to our President Duarte Pacheco. We know how extensive and laborious the preparation of such a big event is. I would like to start with a rather optimistic message. The IPU was founded in 1889. At that time, there were about 1.5 billion people living in this world, a large part of them under very bad living conditions. Today, with 8 billion inhabitants, more than 5 times as many people live on this planet. And despite this enormous growth, life in many parts of the world has become much better. Many diseases and epidemics have been defeated. Infant mortality in the world has dropped dramatically. Life expectancy has almost doubled worldwide. Hunger and malnutrition have been overcome in many parts of the world. The individual danger to perish by violence and war has strongly decreased. Religious minorities have more and better rights in many regions. Equal rights for women and men have not yet been achieved, but are becoming more widespread. The full acceptance of LGBTQ is not yet given, but also here many things are developing in a better direction in many countries. We can share knowledge better in this world, we can communicate better, we can travel better, and we can do so many things that gives hope and confidence. I repeat, that gives hope and confidence. Because nothing is more important in these times than hope and confidence. Because it's a great privilege to live in the 21st century in this world with these opportunities. But is this true for all people on our planet? No, it is not. Unfortunately, not at all. And that is why it's our task as parliamentarians to continue on this road. And this is even as important, to make accessible to all people what mankind has achieved in the 21st century. But it's also our task to preserve all our achievements and the world around us for future generations. This applies in particular to the preservation of our livelihoods, our environment. Climate change and environmental pollution are certainly the greatest challenges mankind is currently facing. And it's quite clear that we can only solve these challenges in solidarity with nations all over the world, regardless if we are coming from the north or the south, the east or the west. It goes without saying that we Germans and we Europeans are aware of the fact that we bear a special responsibility, not only because of our past. I would have loved to end my speech with the affirmation of Germany's commitment to play a vital role in taking on these global challenges. But I feel deeply obliged to use the opportunity to address something else. Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently in a situation where peaceful coexistence between peoples is under attack. The aggressor is clear. It is Russia, which has criminally invaded Ukraine. Russia is responsible for murder, robbery, looting and rape. And I ask the Russian delegation, I ask very personally the colleagues of the Duma, what did you do against this? How and when did you oppose this breach of international law in your parliament? Where did you defend in your parliament the values of IPU? I ask you, are your hearts not breaking when you see the pictures of a Ukraine as well as a Russian mother mourning at the grave of their sons and daughters? Truth is that the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine is unfortunately only one conflict among many. We see war, conflicts and violence not only in Europe, but unfortunately also all over the world. And to be honest, over the threatening events in Ukraine, we in Germany sometimes lose sight of hardship and misery in other parts of the world. This is why our goal, promoting peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies, fighting intolerance, is of utmost importance. Manama will send a strong signal to the world. We as parliamentarians have to be the watchdogs of our joint values. Moreover, we have to be the guardians of peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker from San Marino, followed by the speaker of Italy.
Your Excellencies, honorable colleagues, distinguished guests, it's a pleasure and a privilege to take the floor in the 146th IPU Assembly and bring the contribution of the most tensioned republic in the world, the Republic of San Marino, which is a proactive member state of the Council of Europe for 34 years, a member of the UN General Assembly, and an active member of the organizations that protect and promote human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, seeking peace through multilateralism. The Republic of San Marino is a country that has embraced individuals' fundamental rights by deeply contributing to the interreligious dialogue and by providing shelter to those in need, including Ukrainian refugees in the past years. War is a dramatic event, especially for civilians who are forced to leave everything they have to save their lives and seek a more promising future for their families. San Marino highly values the respect for individual fundamental rights, and as a result, we strongly supported Ukraine and its people during this extremely difficult time. San Marino has a history of rejecting war as a means to resolve conflict, encouraging dialogue and cooperation that sparkle mutual understanding. Today, we are proud to say that San Marino has achieved a very high protection of the fundamental rights for its citizens. For instance, over the years, we have come to a better understanding of the causes and the effect of domestic violence against women. Among various actions of which we are proud of, in 2016, we ratified the Istanbul Convention to fight violence against women, and we worked extremely hard to integrate the principles of the Convention in our culture and processes. As a matter of fact, the latest report by Grevio, the body responsible for monitoring the implementation of the Istanbul Convention, appreciated the efforts made by San Marino's authorities who modified the penal code to assist and protect the victims, and also designed preventive actions and raise awareness on gender violence via an interdisciplinary approach in schools. Integration, inclusion, solidarity, and a culture of non-discrimination are strategic to drive cultural change in a country. Colleagues, to lay out a better future, we need to start from the respect of every single human being, regardless of whether he is a man or a woman, of his sexual orientation, of her cultural differences or economic status. For this reason, I want to express my appreciation for the choice of this team for this assembly, promote peaceful coexistence and fight intolerance, themes that we particularly feel close to us. We are living in a time in which a deeply reflection on these issues is more necessary than ever, so I want to thank you, the IPU, for the work it has led so far. Naturally, we shouldn't forget about ongoing issues that require our attention to achieve inclusive societies. Ensuring the rights of minorities, upholding the rights of vulnerable groups such as LGBTI people, women, migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, the right of gathering and protest, and guarantee freedom of speech. The answer to the present challenges can come through responsible and real dialogue between nations, cultures, and religions. Relationships play a fundamental role to achieve agreements, integration, social and cultural inclusion, all pillars for a peaceful coexistence. Excellencies, colleagues, time is up. We need to make up our duties and responsibilities. It is now the time to share a common goal and agree on position about the severe problems that affect our societies. Let's create a joint program made of actions to bring people together. Our societies need us to be guardians of universal values such as justice, solidarity, and love for each other. I hope that this meeting will enable us to reach the desired results. I'm sure that if we work together and close, we will set the basis for a better future for the benefit of the whole world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker from Italy, might take the floor, please, followed by Madagascar. Yeah.
Mr. President, colleagues, the noble goal to build peaceful coexistence and inclusive societies poses us several challenges on the international and the national front. On the international stage, Italy is committed to promote international solidarity and cooperation as the founding principles of our foreign policy. This is why we are very worried the unprovoked and unexpected Russian aggression against Ukraine is actually threatening the very foundation of the international order, that is the respect of territorial integrity. We fear that this will endanger the global prospect of peace, not only in Europe. We commend all those nations that have acted in upholding this founding rule of international relations. But I want to reflect on another aspect. In order to build coexistence and inclusivity on the internal front, we have to be better in our roles as political leaders and as parliamentarians. Coexistence and inclusivity is not the absence of conflict. It actually means listening, understanding each other's points of view, managing dissent. It is burdensome to listen to those that challenge you. It is unsettling to go as far as to understand the point of view of opponents. It requires a lot of effort to face dissent, but it is key to functioning parliaments and politics. In parliaments, in the political space, this is the only place where this can be done peacefully within rules. Parliaments, political spaces, is the only place where conflicts can become fruitful and creative without violence. If we are committed to coexistence and inclusivity, we must protect the possibility to discuss, demonstrate, and dissent everywhere, even in those countries where dissenting is considered a crime. This is why, to those of us that live in freer societies, we have another burden. We should stand up for those that dissent and demonstrate in countries where this is not possible. This is why more than 80 members of parliament from the Italian parliament, together with the German Bundestag and the Canadian parliament, have decided to start a campaign to support and sponsor Iranian political prisoners that have been condemned to the death penalty as a result of their participation in the demonstrations following the killing of Mahsa Amini. In this way, we want to defend their voice. We want to make our voice their voice. We invite other parliaments to do the same.
Thank you. Next is the Speaker of Madagascar. May take the floor, please, followed by Speaker of Turkey.
Monsieur le Président,
President, parliamentarians, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like, first of all, to thank the Kingdom of Bahrain for its hospitality, which we have enjoyed since we arrived in Manama. The organization is impeccable, and everyone is just so kind. Before talking about the real topic under discussion, I would like to refer to Cyclone Freddy, which hit Madagascar a few weeks ago, causing dozens of deaths and several $1 million in physical destruction. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the efforts made by international organizations, we are still living in a world where there is a proliferation of new kinds of weapons that use artificial intelligence. The increase in terrorism and violent extremism, these are scourges that still exist in the world. Armed conflicts are still underway, threatening international peace and security. These threats must be fought using peaceful means. Each and every one of us present here aspires to a peaceful world without any bloodletting, a world where the great powers cannot impose concessions on the poorer countries. We would like to have a world without war, where natural resources are respected. We want a world where poor countries are no longer affected by organized crime, human trafficking, and the brain drain. We fight discrimination based on religion, color, race, language. We just want a more egalitarian world. To meet this aim, we must all, as individuals, and as civil society and national governments and the UN system, we must all work together with regional organizations to build a more peaceful world that is safer for all. We must promote a culture of peaceful coexistence, fight violence, racism, xenophobia, and radicalism in all forms. Education in terms of peace must become a universal concept and part and parcel of our way of thinking. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we call on governments and international organizations to work harder on disarmament and weapons control. We must limit the manufacturing of weapons and regulate their trade. We should all be mobilized against the proliferation of nuclear weapons, reinforcing the solution to conflicts through diplomacy and mediation. That is a priority for us all. A more tolerant world can be achieved based on all our strong wills. The UN, as a universal system, can help to solve conflicts. It should update and revise its charter, including intra-state conflicts, which has not already been the case. Tolerance and peaceful coexistence between individuals and states are the new watchwords which we must promote after this 146th Assembly. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for action in favor of peace and peaceful coexistence.
Thank you. The next is Ms. Speaker from Turkey, followed by Mr. Speaker of Uganda.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, distinguished members of Parliament. Again, I would like to start my speech by thanking all of you who have given us support with your messages, sending rescue teams, and being with us in in your thoughts and prayers during and after the earthquake that took place in Turkey. And I would like to also remember my colleague who passed away during the earthquake, Yakup Taş, and I'm grateful for the IPU for taking a moment of silence on his behalf. I hope no one lives something like this ever again, and your support, your thoughts are very, and your help is very valuable. Thank you. Distinguished participants, the title of our discussion is Promoting Peaceful Coexistence and Inclusive Societies, Fighting Intolerance. When we talk about tolerating one another, actually toleration doesn't sound like it's such a good term, because to tolerate someone, you would be trying to hold yourself back, and you would be forcing yourself to be nice to them. We shouldn't be tolerating each other, but we don't have to love each other. We don't have to understand everything the other does. We don't have to be getting along and agreeing on everything, but we have to respect one another. Racism, xenophobia, intolerance, and hate speech are on a disturbing rise throughout the globe. These tendencies are threatening our peace, our harmony within our societies. And this is a problem for our nations and our parliaments and international arena. In the international state system, this is a major problem. In Turkey, the principles of tolerance and non-discrimination lie at the heart of our human rights system. We need to remember at all times that democracy and protection of fundamental freedoms and human rights are the main guarantees of non-discriminatory life. When we look at our history, my country's history, we see many examples. We look at the times of the Ottoman Empire, and we see different cultures, different religions, different races living together in peace. We can still see the mosques, the synagogues, and the churches along the side with each other in Istanbul, in Mardin, in many cities in our country. Turkey also was there for the Jewish people who were fled to our land from the Nazis. And currently, we also have an open door policy. We host more than 4 million Syrian brothers and sisters. We host Ukrainians. Our doors are open to all who need help and who are fleeing for their lives. We will continue to fight for peace for everybody. In our National Assembly, we have the Ombudsman institution that we established in 2013 to help implement equality for all. And we also have a commission in our Grand National Assembly that was established in 2016 that works on different issues together with the Human Rights and Equality Institution that was established together with our parliament. We also have a law that protects foreigners who are living in our country. We don't call the 4 million people that have taken refuge in our country refugees, but they're called people under special protection. We have passed laws, established many institutions to ensure everybody is able to live peacefully. Of course, there is another issue. Racism, discrimination, Islamophobia is increasing globally. In many European countries, there's attacks towards religious signs, religious symbols, to women who wear the headscarf, and this is a major issue. The burning of the Holy Quran in Norway, in Sweden, and attacking the Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet of Muslims, this is not helping. This is not helping us. It's unacceptable. It's not freedom of expression. It's not freedom of speech, but it is disrespect. It is intolerance, and it's not acceptable. I'm hoping that we can put these behind. While we talk about, I'm about to finish, while we talk about human rights, respect for each other, we should also remember that there are some European countries and some at other parts of the world where still a woman who wears the headscarf is not allowed in some public spaces. For instance, unfortunately in France, a woman, a mother who wants to accompany her child when she goes or he goes to school on a school trip is not allowed to accompany her if she wears a headscarf. At this day and age,
Speaker, 30 seconds, please.
Yes, I'll complete, Your Excellency. At this day and age, nobody should have a say what a woman should wear or what she decides not to wear. I hope we can resolve our differences and learn to respect each other. Thank you for your patience, Your Excellency.
Thank you. The next speaker is from Uganda. You may take the floor, please, followed by Speaker of Algeria.
Thank you, Mr. President. Greetings from the people of Uganda, the part of Africa. Mr. President, it is not in any doubt that societies that are inclusive and where rights are upheld are more likely to be cohesive, peaceful, and democratic. Uganda returned to democratic rule in 1986 after a long period of dictatorship, and we have never looked back. Failure to involve minorities in leadership was a key factor in causing tension and intolerance in the pre-1986 era. When the country returned to democratic rule in 1986, we introduced quotas for women, youth, persons with disabilities, workers, the elderly, and the army in parliament, alongside the directly elected members of parliament. As we speak, women in Uganda's parliament are 33.8% against a global average of 26.6%. We also have one of the youngest parliaments in the world. This was one way of ensuring inclusivity in parliament, where laws are made for the order, good governance, and ensuring democratic rule in our country. Mr. President, multi-party democracy has been hailed as the best form of governance, and as IPU, it is at the core of our system. As we promote the multi-party system of democracy, we need to ensure as parliaments that our societies are mature and understand tolerance of different opinions. We should ensure that we build institutions that are tolerant of different opinions, and we should ensure that we respect, and above all, our electoral bodies should be beyond reproach. Poverty has remained a key driver for intolerance and exclusion in our society. The gap between the rich and the poor is increasing in most of our societies. We call upon the developed world to remove non-tariff barriers that are blocking entry of goods, especially from developing countries. Sometimes you find supermarket shelves in the Western world are empty when we have fruits, vegetables, and other agricultural products rotting in our countries. We need the Western world to work with us to add value to our products. For example, in the coffee industry, which is around $460 billion, coffee-producing countries earn only $25 billion, with Africa earning $2.8 billion, while Uganda, which is Africa's largest coffee exporter, earns only $820 million. The hemorrhage of our resources have kept us in poverty at the mercy of Western world, giving us aid and loans. We need more partnerships and fair trade than loans and aid. And as parliamentarians, we can and ensure that this stops. As I conclude, it is important that parliaments review and strengthen laws and policies to protect minority rights and prevent discrimination, establish institutions to protect the rights of minorities, like how in Uganda we have the Equal Opportunities Commission, the Uganda Human Rights Commission, but also carry out oversight function over the executive and make laws for order, good governance, and development of our countries. Through this, we shall be able to promote peaceful coexistence and inclusiveness and fight intolerance. However, in doing all this, we must remember we are representatives of our people. We should therefore make laws that fit in our societies, not our societies fit in our laws. We must not let global pressures and trends usurp our cultures and beliefs. That is why for us in Uganda, we are wary of Western trends that are in total conflict with our values. We strongly condemn the promotion of LGBT activities targeting our children who are not able at a young age to discern what is bad from what is good. They are not able to know that whatever glitters is not gold. And that's why, as a Parliament of Uganda, we are in the process of making a law that is going to protect our children and our families from this dangerous thing, which is a human wrong, but being called a human right. And as I conclude, Mr. President, I want to thank you for the hospitality. And like our former President Idi Amin, when he was hosted by the Queen, after a very good reception, he told the Queen that when you come to Uganda, we shall revenge. When you come to our country, we shall revenge. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is from Democratic Republic of Congo, followed by Speaker of Canada.
Monsieur le Président,
President, distinguished colleagues representing parliaments from around the world at this 146th IPU Assembly, I'm speaking on behalf of the parliamentary delegation of the Democratic Republic of Congo. I would like, first of all, to thank the Kingdom of Bahrain for its hospitality. I would also like to thank the organizers, and I cannot but congratulate those in charge of the Union who selected this theme, promoting peaceful coexistence in inclusive societies, fighting intolerance. Sir, the Democratic Republic of Congo has been independent since the 60s and has constantly fought for democracy and against intolerance. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, we understand that a truly inclusive society is a democratic society, a society that protects human rights. Peaceful coexistence and the fight against intolerance on an international level are still marked by what I might call the intolerance that Africans suffer from outside the African continent. On a national level, the Democratic Republic of Congo has adopted a constitution that embodies and enshrines the principle of a truly peaceful and inclusive society. Our constitution contains various provisions that establish inclusiveness and seek to promote peace. Several provisions fight against discrimination against women, people with handicaps, native peoples. Several provisions have been adopted by our parliament to promote a truly peaceful and inclusive society. Notwithstanding our fight to promote an inclusive society, a human society, a peaceful society, these efforts have been undermined by the aggression against the democratic people of of Congo on the part of Rwanda. The aggressiveness of Rwanda towards our country is motivated by the pillaging of the huge natural resources we have in the country. It's a question of expansionism on the part of Rwanda. All the efforts we have made since our current president came to power are being undermined, sabotaged by this aggressive attitude by Rwanda, which keeps stealing our natural resources. Rwanda keeps saying the same things. This is old-fashioned. In fact, all they seek to do is steal our resources. We cannot tolerate that kind of attitude. Mr. President, it is inconceivable that parliamentarians around the world meeting here could try to oppose aggression, yet abstain when talking about Rwandan aggression against the DRC. That's inconceivable for parliamentarians meeting in Bahrain who are fighting to uphold human rights. How can they close their eyes to massive violations of the rights of women and children in the Democratic Republic of Congo? The time has come for parliaments around the world to look squarely in the face what is happening in our country. They should say no to Rwandan aggression perpetrated against the DRC. They must uphold the values of peace and human rights in the DRC. On the contrary, people keep saying the same thing, that Rwanda is not doing anything bad. We cannot pretend.
And still support an authoritarian regime. We cannot pretend to be fighting for human rights and keeping a blind eye on what is happening in the DRC. We should bring an end to that parliamentarian diplomacy of double standards, which is schizophrenic. I think time has come for the parliamentarians from all over the world to understand the crisis which is happening in the DRC. We should be truthful to ourselves. Let's be open. Let's recognize that we cannot make interests, financial interests, political interests prevail on values, values of human rights, values of democracy. Nous ne pouvons pas, Monsieur le Président.
President, we cannot be hypocritical. We cannot say we're fighting against nuclear weapons and in favor of human rights, but then when it's the question of the DRC, just close our eyes to please others.
We need your support. We need the old world to understand what is happening in the DRC. This is the West. This is worse than Ukraine. This is what 10 million people dead in the DRC. This is worse than the genocide which happened in that small country. No, my friends, our friends, the people of the DRC send us to Bahrain to tell you that we need your support, support against aggression, support against occupation, and support against massive human rights violations happening currently in the DRC. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for the international support you will give us to combat occupation, aggression on the part of Rwanda, and to uphold human rights in the DRC. The Rwandan aggression is an expansionist movement designed to steal our natural resources. We remain an open society. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker of Canada, please take the floor, followed by معالي الرئيس تامر سويد من الكويت. تفضل.